Campfire Story.
In the sleepy town of Harrisville, the newspaper beheld any scrap of a story it could find. From a fender bender to a loose tooth finally coming out of little Sally's mouth. And those were the good days. On the bad ones, which were coming around more frequently, they only wrote about the weather, the sale on sneakers, or even the birds the columnist had seen on his way to work. The crows seemed to be aplenty this morning, he would write, but I haven't seen much of the doves lately. However, one chilly November morning, the newspaper was enough to make Mr. Greenwald push away his breakfast and Alex Clemens, the local football star, run to the bathroom. No one went to school that day. They just all sat around, staring at the newspaper like a TV set. Donnie Avondale killed, the paper screamed in dark, black ink. On November 4th, Ms. Avondale was found brutally murdered in a vacant cabin outside Brooklyn County, with finger marks across her throat and bruises on her cheeks. The autopsy has not been conducted, but due to the smell of liquor on her person, the current theory is that she was coerced while extremely intoxicated, then strangled. Officer Garrett has assured us that the killer will be found, but until then, everyone must exercise caution when going outside. Her funeral is currently being planned, and the date will be published in a later issue. No one dared go outside. No one breathed. No one grieved. Their glances went from the story on their dining room table to their window, hoping and praying that they saw no one past it. Everyone's supper was passed in silence, and children went to bed with no argument. Donnie Avondale was the shining star of Harrisville. She had the most intelligent mind, the kindest disposition. Or at least that's what everyone told each other, somehow convincing themselves that that's what they had always believed. In reality, the townspeople had always said that Donnie was destined for nothing more than a broken marriage and 20 bottles down each night. Who could have known she was meant for a lot more? Not just a newspaper story, not just a sobering moment. She was meant to be first. The next day, the newspaper told another story of heart-wrenching sorrow. Simon Batterman, a quiet boy who loved to draw, had been beaten to death. The same cycle of grief settled into every house. The next day, it was Quinn Clemens, who had been sent out to get milk. His body was burned to a crisp, leaving a black stain on the concrete. Gerald Carman, laying in a field with his skull smashed in. Freddie Doherty, left on a driveway with tire marks and shattered bones. No matter how many precautions people took, there was always a fresh corpse by the next day. The police force, which only consisted of about 6 armed men, could never catch the killer in the act. But despite their short staff, they did notice a pattern. Each victim was in alphabetical order, from A to H so far. There were also no adults in the casualties. In fact, no victim had been above the age of 18. These realizations gave the police enough information to try and protect the ones next in the killer's reign of terror. However, a slew of cop cars parked in front of your house. It was a sign of doom, not hope, for no matter how many people were around the victim, and no matter how armed the family members were, blood was always spilt by 3 o'clock. The murderer was now known as the roll call killer, and their kill count was getting more and more immense. The entire town, or what was left of it, held their breath as the Z's came and went. Surely the slaughter would end, since the list had ended the night before. Oh, how wrong they were. That evening, the ear-splitting siren woke even the most heavy sleepers. The tornado alarm was going off, but the night was clear as the townspeople stepped outside of their homes, stepping into the town square that joined every house. In the middle of it stood a woman with matted brown hair and a rumpled skirt. Her office shirt was not buttoned, leaving her exposed. Her entire body was covered in dried blood and bits of leaves. She had a megaphone in her hand, the high school's insignia printed on the side.
"Now that we have taken roll,"
she said into the microphone, her voice soft but ice cold,
"we must now begin the conferences. Mr. and Ms. Avondale, you're first."
The couple didn't dare step off their porch, but instead held each other tightly. The woman continued to talk, ignoring their fear.
"Your daughter, Donnie, didn't struggle for very long. She also stank of vodka and was extremely drunk. This is very concerning, and I want to give you the number of a local counselor that she can sort out her issues. They specialize in troubled teens.
The Avondales looked at each other in shock as the woman pulled a card out of her pocket, holding it out to them. No one moved.
Well, don't just stand there. Take it. I insist.
She said. After much whispering, Mr. Avondale slowly walked off the porch and into the square, a revolver in his hand. When he was within shooting distance, he lifted the gun up with a shaky hand, trying to aim a kill shot. The woman stood perfectly still, hands neatly behind her back.
Now, Mr. Avondale, don't blame your daughter's failure on me.
She whispered. Mr. Avondale lowered the gun.
Miss Marcia, what happened? Why, I saw those children's futures, Mr. Avondale. They were to stay in this puny little town, having more children, putting more through the school. Then having their own children. Who knows, maybe just enough babies will be born to push us past the population line. But that's all Harrisville will ever accomplish. I was putting those brats out of their misery. She was going to college out of state. She had a future.
Miss Marcia said nothing, but instead started to laugh. For about a minute, she did nothing but laugh, laugh, laugh. Finally, Miss Marcia composed herself, smoothing out her skirt.
A future? You know just as much as I do that your precious Donnie wasn't worth any man willing to drag her off the streets.
Miss Marcia said incredulously. There was a gasp and a lot of murmuring, but no one spoke on Donnie's behalf. Not even her terrified father, who still held his revolver at his side.
Now it's the Battermans' turn, and I must say, I am quite disappointed in their son,
she announced. Suddenly, a gunshot rang out. Miss Marcia May looked at her chest, which was beginning to soak with blood, then fell over with a thud. Mr. Avondale's gun was smoking within trembling fingers. Mrs. Avondale ran out to meet her husband, embracing him. He was still holding the revolver in front of him, his eyes still on the body. Finally, after a few minutes, he blinked and looked down at his wife. It was all over. Everyone went silently back into their homes, occasionally peeking through the curtains to check if the body had stirred. The police were called, but there was nothing they could do in the morning. And so, as the night came and went, the townspeople could finally rest. Their killer had been given her own medicine. The next morning, the body was taken to the mortuary and later burned, per Miss Marcia's request. Officer Garrett, meanwhile, wanted to ask the Avondales a few questions and give his thanks. The door was unlocked, and the living room was empty. There wasn't a sound coming from within. Officer Garrett explored further, thinking that the couple were sleeping in after the long night. He went up the stairs, peeking into each of the rooms. When he got the bedroom, he stopped in his tracks. Mrs. Avondale was sprawled on the bed, blood trickling down her neck and onto the sheets. An axe was sticking out of her throat. Her eyes were to heaven, and her mouth was open in horrified surprise. Mr. Avondale was nowhere to be found. After all, he had gotten what he wanted. Class was now in session. Subscribe or I will haunt your house. If you like this video, please do comment, like, and subscribe for more. Thanks for hearing. See you in the next one.